The bad blood between President Trump and Secretary of State Rex Tillerson finally reaching a boiling point Tuesday, as the commander-in-chief fired his top diplomat in yet another staff shakeup at the White House.
Andrew McCabe believes his firing has something to do, obviously, with the firing of or his relationship with James Comey. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, he released a statement in response to the news from the Department of Justice that he has been terminated just shy of his 50th birthday. And he says, here's the reality. I am being singled out and treated this way because of the role I played, the actions I took, and the events I witnessed in the aftermath of the firing of James Comey. And he went on and singled out the president in his statement, Don, saying, the OIG's focus, the Office of Inspector General's focus on me in this report became a part of an unprecedented effort by the administration, driven by the president himself to remove me from my position, destroy my reputation, and possibly strip me of a pension that I worked 21 years to earn.
Fallout now from the firing of Secretary of State Rex Tillerson. The White House has now fired a State Department spokesman who put out a statement this morning defending the secretary's work and expressing surprise at how the secretary found out. His name is Stephen Goldstein. He's the Undersecretary of State for Public Diplomacy, and he has been fired. He is the official, we read you a statement a short time ago, who put out a statement saying the secretary had every intention of remaining in the job. You see the statement there, and it went on to essentially question the president's manners, saying the secretary did not speak to the president this morning and is unaware of the reason for being fired.
9 of 12 members of the National Park System Advisory Board quit Tuesday, citing concern over the Trump administration's priorities. That, according to a letter to Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke obtained by CNN. Most of the members resigning had terms expiring in May. Their letter says they have not been able to meet with Zinke and the Interior Department during his first year on the job, saying, quote, their requests to engage have been ignored.
So Sebastian Gorka has resigned, White House officials are confirming. Now, this is significant in the fact that many of you guys have seen Sebastian Gorka on TV. He was an advisor to the president. He had a habit of making controversial comments and at times even undermining other members of the Trump administration when he would do these interviews on television. But one thing that was really notable about him and his tenure is that no one really seemed to know what issues he was working on.
That the Secretary, Tom Price, has indeed resigned. Just as we were told it would happen, that he would resign, I'm told the president is prepared, of course, to accept this resignation.
Now the New York Times is reporting that Rachel Brand is planning to step down. This is after only being on the job about 9 months. And so, Wolf, the question now is, why is she stepping down?
Katie Benner, who wrote the story in the New York Times, is joining us on the phone right now. Katie, tell us a little bit more, what you can. Do we know, has she given an explanation, Rachel Brand, why all of a sudden, after only 9 months on the job as the number 3 official at the Justice Department, she's decided to leave?
So no explanation has been given. We do know that she is leaving for a job in the private sector to be the general counsel of a Fortune 500 company.
A second White House official has resigned over allegations of domestic abuse. Speechwriter David Sorensen denies the accusations, but he stepped down anyway.
Maggie, I guess the first question, why? Why is Hope Hicks leaving?
Well, I was actually listening to you talking about everything she had been through with him, and it really reminds you of this is a grueling and in many ways terrible job.
Another day of chaos as the president's top economic advisor, Gary Cohn, is resigning. He is leaving the White House.
White House firing to report on. Sources tell CNN that President Trump's longtime personal aide, John McEntee, was fired and escorted from the West Wing on Monday. McEntee was reportedly pushed out because he is being investigated for serious financial crimes, which caused problems with his obtaining his security clearance.
Russia is expelling 23 British diplomats as ties continue to worsen after Sergei Skripal and his daughter were targeted with a nerve agent on UK soil. The move comes in retaliation for Britain's decision to kick out 23 Russians, who Prime Minister Theresa May says were spies working under diplomatic cover. Those now named by Moscow must leave within a week. After summoning the UK's ambassador, the Kremlin has also decided to close the British Council, a body aimed at promoting cultural ties.
I just had a meeting in the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. This crisis has arisen as a result of an appalling attack in the United Kingdom. The attempted murder of 2 people using a chemical weapon developed in Russia and not declared by Russia, the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, as Russia was and is obliged to do.
The British government has firmly pointed the finger of blame at Russian President Vladimir Putin. Moscow denies any involvement, but has refused to explain how former spy Skripal and his daughter Yulia could have been exposed to a chemical weapon in the UK that British authorities contend was developed in the former Soviet Union. British police are reportedly working from the theory that the nerve agent was somehow stowed in Yulia's luggage when she came to visit her father from Russia. Moscow has now also opened their own investigation into the attack on Yulia, who is a Russian citizen.
To obey is better than sacrifice. To heed is better than the fat of rams. Rebellion is like the sin of divination, witchcraft, and arrogance, like the evil of idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, God has rejected you as king. And Saul did to Samuel, I've sinned, I violated the Lord's command, and in your instructions, I was afraid of the people. So I gave in to them. Now I beg you, forgive my sin and come back with me so that I may worship the Lord. And Samuel said to him, I will not go back with you. You have rejected the word of the Lord, and the Lord has rejected you as king over Israel. And Samuel turned to leave. Saul caught hold of the hem of his robe, and he tore it. Oh, you could hear the groans from the crowd. The Bible is very clear in the chapters leading up to this and after this. Saul isn't begging to get right with God. Saul wants the prophet to walk with the king in front of the people so everyone knows the king is great again. He just wants favor. He just wants the popular vote on this one. Samuel, come back with me in front of the people so that everyone can see I'm good. And Samuel goes, no, we're done here. God's rejected you as king. And as he walks away, the king goes out and he grabs that robe that signifies this is the prophet, and he rips it. And there's got to be this, oh. We don't have a prophet like this today. It's not like ripping my shirt after service. It's like, well, that's just weird. It'd be, if you ever had an opportunity to shake hands with the Pope, don't rip his robe. They may not have to tell you that. That may be a given, but that's what happens here. I mean, Samuel is seen as the prophet of God. Not comparing that pro or cons with Pope. I'm just trying to pick an image of what we could see ripping and going, that would make nightly news. And Samuel uses it as a teachable moment to this king. And Samuel said to him, the Lord has torn the kingdom of Israel from you today, has given it to one of your neighbors, to one better than you. He who is the glory of Israel does not lie or change his mind. He is not a man that he should change his mind. And Samuel uses it as a teachable moment. He turns and his robe is ripped, and he looks at the king, and God just did this to you. God just tore the kingdom away from you. I never got the very end of this, verse 34, but I think it's about to apply to our seance table that's waiting. Samuel left for Ramah, and Saul went up to his home in Gibeah of Saul. Until the day Samuel died, he did not go see Saul again, though Samuel mourned for him, and the Lord was grieved that he had made Saul king over Israel. 15 years later, Saul now says, I need to go see a witch. 15 years after that event, Saul is terrified. Back to our story in chapter 28, it sets up what you need to know. You see, now that God has rejected Saul as king, Samuel goes to the house of Jesse, lines up all the sons, said, God says the next king is here on the ranch. And he goes through all 7 of the boys, and he looks at Pop. Hey, I'm pretty sure God speaks clearly. Are you sure these are all your boys? Well, I got the youngest one. He's out watching sheep. But you wanted leaders. These are my leaders. David's dad didn't even consider him leadership potential. And Samuel says, well, bring in the one that you don't think can be a leader. And the moment he saw David, God told him, this is the next king of Israel. Anoint him. It's where later on we're going to get the story of David fighting Goliath. Maybe you've heard of that fame, and the giant goes down. And everyone in the land starts to know God's hand is on the next king. It won't go through the line of Saul. The kingdom's been ripped from Saul's family. And Saul is going to hate David for that. Saul is going to pursue David for 4 years, trying to kill him through the wilderness, through caves, through the desert, through En-Gedi. David finally will throw up his hands and say, where can I go in this small country of Israel where the king's not trying to kill me? I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go across the enemy lines. I'm going to go across with my hands up, white flag in there. Hey, I know I killed your Goliath, but look, I'm just running for my life, and maybe they'll let me live there. And sure enough, the Philistines open their ranks, and they allow David in. And over years, David proves himself to the Philistines. He's not a threat to us. And he knows his king won't chase him behind enemy lines. And now chapter 28 starts. David and his 600 men are with the enemy's camp. Saul hasn't talked to the prophet in 15 years. And that verse that said, and Samuel was dead, verse 3, and all of Israel mourned for him. Samuel didn't just die. He died back in chapter 25. This is just the Bible's way of letting you know, by the way, there is no more prophet. Your king has been rejected by God for 15 years. Your king has been without the word of God for 15 years. The prophet has been dead for 4 years. Your next future and hope is in the enemy's camp. It is the dark of night. And then catch this. The enemy, it says, is simply camped at Shunem, while the Israelites are camped at Gilboa. That just seems like little Bible name references you skip over. Do a little homework today. Go and Google Shunem, Old Testament, Gilboa, Old Testament. You're going to find that this is not a border war. This is not Israel fighting the Philistines, people from the Mediterranean seaboard on a border. The Philistines are 20 miles into the heart of Israel, and they've cut right through the middle of the nation. They are about to split the nation in two. And once they have their lines drawn, they will conquer the north and they will conquer the south. This is a last-ditch effort to save your country. And the enemy's already gone for the heart of Israel. And the king the night before is understanding what is at stake, hearing word that David and his men are in the enemy's camp, knowing they've already gone through the heart of your country. He tries to pray and God doesn't answer. He's looking for God to speak in dreams and God doesn't answer. He tries to find that little word Urim, and you're like, what is a Urim? It's a little vest that the priest wore back there, probably different colored stones that they would cast or draw lots with that sometimes God would speak through. In other words, he's tried religion, he's tried prayer, he's tried revelation, and God isn't speaking to Saul, and he is scared to death. So he comes to his leadership. Any of you know of a good witch? Excuse me? Is this a trick question? There's a little verse that said you expelled the witches from the land. Once again, we're about to find out mostly. Saul's obedience is always mostly. You got rid of all the witches, mostly. There's one at Endor. And here's the problem. The Israelites are camped at Gilboa. The enemy has come all the way into the heart of the nation, and they are camped at Shunem. And guess what? Endor is on the other side of the enemy's camp. 8 miles away, Saul has to take 2 guys through the dead of night, right on the enemy's border, to find the witch. Because he's desperately seeking answers from an afterlife. And this is how far he's gone. Now, before we get into the witch's tent, because I know you're waiting, your popcorn shaking, your Diet Coke, and you're like, I want to see what happens. Don't read ahead, it blows it. I just got to do a disclaimer. For those of you going to walk out going, you know what? I think we need to find a witch. I think we need to get out the Ouija board. I think we need to go back some palm reading. I think we need to get tarot cards. I think we need to pay more attention to our horoscope. I want to make this very clear. God's law is incredibly clear on this issue. Under that's in the Bible, I gave you a second line of verses. Leviticus 19, Leviticus 20, Deuteronomy 18, especially 9 through 14. They're going to read like this. Do not turn to spirits of the dead. Do not seek out familiar spirits, because you will be unclean by them. I am the Lord your God. The person who turns to spirits of the dead or any familiar spirits are committing prostitution by going to them. I will set my face against that person, and I will cut them off from the midst of my people. God's word is incredibly clear. Don't have anything to do with spiritual junk, with card reading, with spiritual horoscopes, with seances. He goes, I want you to run from it. I don't want you to get involved in any of that. He goes, in fact, because I am your God, I am your only spirit, I'm a jealous God. He goes, I'm going to consider it prostitution. You just committed adultery in your relationship with me, he says. If you start seeking after anything else that's of the spiritual, don't have any part of it, he says. He goes, don't even play around in that realm. Get rid of the cards, get rid of the Ouija board, get rid of the channel, get rid of the horoscope. He goes, stop it, knock it off. Follow me, I'm your God. And they got rid of most of the witches. And Saul now is so desperate and filled with terror looking for answers, he will find one left, an Endor. This is going to be good. He disguises himself, putting on other clothes. One, because he's going through the dark of the night. There's a chess game. He's the king. He's the target. If the Philistines can capture him, oh, they've got the heart of the nation. Secondly, I think he knows when he shows up to the witch's tent as the king, he's the one that gave the orders, no more witches. It ain't going to go well for him. So he puts on his street clothes. He puts on the hoodie. He puts on the dark glasses, probably not at night. He gets his two strongest guys, and they have to go 8 miles through the dead of night. They get to the witch's tent. They wake her up, and here's the scene. Consult the spirit for me, he said. Bring up for me the one that I name. In verse 9, but the woman said to him, surely you know what Saul has done. He has cut off the mediums and the spiritists from the land. Why have you set a trap for my life to bring about my death? And Saul swore to her by the Lord, as surely as the Lord lives, you will not be punished for this. And the woman asked, then who shall I bring up for you? Bring up Samuel, he said. She sniffs this out. She thinks it's a government sting operation. Dead of night, people wake her up. These aren't the usual hours. You aren't my usual clients. You're strangers in the middle of the night. I'm not falling for this. Hey, are you a witch? No. Big pointy hat, long nose with a wart on it, little pot of something boiling on the side. That's how my mind goes. Are you a witch? Nope. Is that a broomstick you're riding? Nope. Just house cleaning, 2 a.m. You know what the king has said. I'm not falling for this. And Saul swears to her by the Lord. Isn't this irony? A king that hasn't heard from God in 15 years. A king who is seeking after God, and God has been silent for 15 years. A witch who, whatever parlor trick she's involved with, let's at least say black magic or the arts, and he swears by the one true God to her that things are going to be good in this situation. You can't make this stuff up. Who do you want to bring up? I need to talk to Samuel, the dead prophet. And when the woman saw Samuel, she cried out at the top of her voice and said to Saul, why have you deceived me? You are Saul. And the king said to her, don't be afraid. What do you see? And the woman said, I see a spirit coming up from the ground. What does he look like? Saul asked. An old man. I'm sure he didn't like that. An old man wearing a robe is coming up, she said. And Saul knew it was Samuel, and he bowed down and prostrated himself with his face to the ground. And Samuel said to Saul, why have you disturbed me by bringing me up? We're going to get to a good conversation, but right now you got a lot of questions. Seriously? Seriously? Is God really working in a witch's tent through her seance to bring up a dead prophet? Seriously? That seems to go against every Sunday school story I ever heard. Really? I think so. I don't have any other explanation for this. The witch isn't in charge of this show. She is scared to death. The witch is used to doing her little parlor tricks. The witch is used to telling people what she sees. It's very generic, but it sounds really specific for your life. And you pay your money and you walk away thinking you've gotten some results. The witch may even be used to dealing with some demonic spirits, but the witch has never encountered a real spirit. The witch is scared to death. She shrieks at the top of her lungs. She knows this is not of her doing. She recognizes it is Samuel. She recognizes now this is Saul. I don't know because she put the 2 and 2 together. I don't know if it's because Samuel is going to greet Saul and now she knows the name. Saul is going to have a conversation and he really thinks this is Samuel. Chris, what in the world is happening here? I think God's using a crystal ball in this one. I think it's why they didn't teach me that in Sunday school. Too much explaining to do afterwards. I think we'll get to the reason of that in a moment. People go, well, this isn't of God. This has got to be demonic. Really? Because this guy is going to speak the word of God. And I scratch my head and go, this isn't supposed to happen. When the darkest night in the nation, one of the darkest times in Saul's life, our darkest time politically, in a witch's tent, and God shows up with a prophet and says, I'm going to speak here? Are you kidding me? This isn't the only time. In Mark chapter 9, when Jesus went up to the mountain and he was transfigured, where the God in Jesus bursted out through the skin, Moses and Elijah appeared with him. God's done this before. He'll do it again. And at this time, in the midst of a witch's tent, God's watching what's going on, and he goes, okay, I'll play along. In my opinion, this is Samuel, who shows up and simply says, why have you disturbed me by bringing me up? Can you imagine this conversation? God looking at Samuel, hey, I know after all those years of serving me, you're really enjoying paradise. I need you to go back. I need you to put on the old crusty robe. I know you like the new heavenly body. I'm going to make you the old dude again. It's just for a few moments. Watch what happens. Samuel said to Saul in verse 15, why have you disturbed me by bringing me up? Well, I'm in great distress, Saul said. The Philistines are fighting against me. God has turned away from me. He no longer answers me, either by prophets or dreams. So I've called on you to tell me what to do. By the way, he's got good reasons, doesn't he? Saul always has good reasons. I know I'm breaking the rules here. I know I'm going against the law. I know I'm going against the very laws that I actually set up and helped on this one. But I got good reasons for this. I'm in a time of crisis. This has been his MO since chapter 9. Saul has always fallen short of total obedience, but always had good reasons. You don't understand it was the people. You don't understand it's the popularity. You don't understand how people were going to see me. You don't understand what I was really doing. Actually, I had really great motives on this one. He always has a reason for stopping short of God's full obedience.